Prepare yourself, because what happened just a few hours ago is something no one imagined seeing in the 21st century. The future King of Great Britain openly defying the country's elected government, and doing so before the entire world. William's gesture was not merely an absence at a Keir Starmer event, it was a silent yet deafening message that shook the foundations of Westminster and left even the Prime Minister's allies in panic. Sources close to the palace say the prince drew a line in the sand, refusing to take part in any ceremony that, in his view, turns the monarchy into a puppet of Parliament. This has not happened in 70 years, not since Queen Elizabeth ascended the throne and sealed the pact of neutrality that kept the United Kingdom in balance. But now, that pact is broken. And what is beginning may be the greatest institutional clash between Crown and government since the abdication crisis of 1936. Pay attention. What you are about to understand in the next few minutes changes everything we thought we knew about the behind-the-scenes workings of British power. The spark for this crisis was as dramatic as it was devastating. Yesterday afternoon, William simply refused to appear at Starmer's official event at Lancaster House, a high-level reception to celebrate Commonwealth Day. Over 300 guests, ambassadors, ministers, and diplomats awaited the arrival of the heir to the throne, with cameras in position and royal protocol already underway. Then, 15 minutes before his triumphant entrance, Kensington Palace sent a brief, blunt statement with no frills. The Prince of Wales would not attend. No prior warning, no plausible justification, just a refusal that froze the room and left the Prime Minister's office completely disoriented. According to insider accounts, foreign diplomats were left speechless, and government aides scrambled through the corridors trying to cobble together an urgent excuse for the fiasco. The result? The entire United Kingdom watched live as the future king delivered a symbolic blow to the heart of the Labour government. A calculated, planned, and politically charged act. But what seemed like a mere gesture of displeasure has, according to sources in Westminster's political press, revealed itself to be a full-blown palace rebellion. Those close to William claim he said, in firm tones, that he could not stand on the same stage as a government that is trying to destroy the backbone of the monarchy. Harsh and dangerous, words for a prince who, theoretically, must remain neutral. And the reason is explosive. The Starmer government is reportedly preparing reforms that would drastically reduce the Crown's autonomy and funding, subjecting the monarch to parliamentary approval for speeches, travel, and even appointments within the royal household. In other words, they would turn the king into a public servant under political tutelage. For many, this is the boldest attempt to hollow out the monarchy since the last century. And by refusing to shake Starmer's hand, William made it clear he will not be complicit in this process. He did what no heir to the throne has done in 70 years. He defied the government, and he did so publicly, deliberately, and dramatically. The impact was immediate. William's absence not only humiliated the government before dozens of heads of state and diplomats, but laid bare a constitutional fracture that can no longer be hidden. Sources from Downing Street describe Keir Starmer's reaction as pure contained fury, a tense silence, a mix of embarrassment and political despair. The Foreign Office, according to reports, was only informed of the decision minutes after the press. The diplomatic chaos was total. Commonwealth guests asked, stunned, where the Prince of Wales was. The event, meant to symbolize British unity, became a portrait of fragmentation and conflict. Analysts compared the scene to Suez in 1956, when the UK's image suffered an irreversible blow. But now, the blow comes from within. On one side, a government that claims it wants to modernize. On the other, a monarchy that sees itself surrounded, threatened, and, for the first time in decades, willing to fight back. And this reaction, according to sources, was only the first step. William is said to have promised that if the reforms go ahead, the Crown's response will be historic. And it was precisely at 8 o'clock in the evening that the world realized the tension had crossed all boundaries. Kensington Palace released a carefully worded but devastating statement. William spoke of defending the constitutional foundations of the United Kingdom and preserving the independence and dignity of the Crown. Measured words, but with the weight of a political earthquake. The message was read by analysts as a direct accusation. The prince was suggesting that the Starmer government is trying to turn the monarchy into a bureaucratic appendage of Parliament. Legal experts immediately classified the gesture as an unprecedented constitutional attack, and the effect was explosive. The Conservative opposition saw a golden opportunity to regain ground, while the Labour Party plunged into panic. Labour MPs, according to leaks, began exchanging messages in internal groups describing the episode as a strategic disaster, a shot in the foot, and even the start of a war the government cannot win. For the first time in decades, the royal family has aligned its image with public indignation, and politically, that is devastating. In the corridors of Westminster, panic turned to despair. Sources linked to the Labour Party itself report that Starmer's aides spent the night trying to staunch the political bleeding, while opinion polls showed a rapid collapse in the government's popularity. According to a survey released just hours after William's statement, 68% of Britons said they supported the prince's stance. Only 14% backed the government's position. Even among Labour voters, nearly 70% believed the palace is right to react. That alone would be enough to paralyze any administration. But there's more. Internal reports indicate that Starmer's own cabinet is split. Some ministers are pushing for an immediate retreat and a public apology. Others, pressured by the party's Republican wing, insist on pressing ahead, even if it means facing the royal family. Meanwhile, senior royal figures such as Princess Anne and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, are said to have quietly expressed support for William, calling the government's proposals an affront to the service given to the nation. The country now appears divided between two irreconcilable poles. And amid this institutional storm, one fact went almost unnoticed, but reveals the scale of the rupture the UK is experiencing. Palace sources claim there are internal discussions about coordinated action by other senior royals. In practical terms, this would mean a large-scale boycott of all official government events promoted by Starmer until the reforms are withdrawn. Imagine the impact. Without royal presence, state banquets would lose their diplomatic prestige, official receptions would be emptied, and honors ceremonies, which depend directly on the Crown's representation, simply could not take place. The entire system, which for centuries has balanced tradition and politics, would suffer symbolic collapse. A senior palace advisor is said to have told The Times that if the government wants to test its strength against history, it will quickly discover who has more support in the heart of the British people. It's the kind of statement that echoes far beyond the walls of Kensington. It's a warning. The monarchy is no longer willing to remain silent. And this time, the people seem to be standing and applauding. Before continuing with the most explosive revelations of this story, I need to make a quick request, but one that makes all the difference. If you want to follow every twist and turn and stay up to date with everything the government and the media aren't telling you, subscribe to the channel now and leave a like. This shows YouTube that you support free, unfiltered information and helps me bring you more behind-the-scenes details and documents in the coming hours. The situation is changing by the minute, and what comes next could be even more serious than it seems. And the people really did react, and with an intensity that even the palace did not expect. Within hours, social media was flooded with messages, hashtags, and videos in support of William. Phrases like "stand with the crown" and "defend the monarchy" trended at the top of the UK's and even the US's most discussed topics. Influencers, military veterans, and radio commentators spent the day praising the prince's gesture as an act of patriotic courage. According to YouGov, William's public approval soared to historic levels, while Starmer's fell to the lowest point since he took office. The contrast is stark. While the palace presents itself as the guardian of British tradition and sovereignty, the government is increasingly seen as the face of a disconnected, arrogant political elite, ever more distant from the streets. The perception is devastating for Labour. A government that promised to unite the country now appears to have divided it between London and the rest of the UK. And for Conservative and monarchist voters, this division sounds like the awakening of a new era of national resistance. And it is precisely here, at this turning point, that the crucial role of those following this story comes into play. If you want to understand every move in this battle and receive the next bombshells firsthand, subscribe now and leave a like. This shows you're on the side of unfiltered information and helps me bring you exclusive behind-the-scenes updates in the coming hours. Because what lies ahead could completely redefine British politics and even the very destiny of the monarchy. We're not talking about a simple administrative disagreement. We're talking about a power struggle between two forces that, for centuries, have sustained the balance of the kingdom, Parliament, and the Crown. And this time, that balance could crumble before our eyes. Every decision, every word, every silence now counts. And the more you understand what's being plotted behind the scenes, the more you'll realize. The United Kingdom is experiencing something not seen since the days of Churchill. Behind the smooth speeches and calculated gestures, something much bigger is at stake. And sources close to the palace say William knows this better than anyone. He sees what many politicians pretend not to, that the attack on the monarchy is not just a matter of budget or modernization, but part of a broader project to weaken the cultural and spiritual pillars that keep British identity alive. According to leaked internal reports, Labour's reforms would require the sovereign to seek parliamentary approval, even for international travel, speeches, and bilateral meetings, turning the throne into a symbolic position, without voice or political weight. William, according to the same sources, told close allies, "A king who must ask permission to represent the realm is not a king. He is a government mascot." This vision explains the confrontation. He is not fighting just for power, but for the very soul of the monarchy, and, ultimately, for the idea of a sovereign Great Britain in the face of an increasingly globalist and bureaucratic establishment. Inside Parliament, the atmosphere is one of political civil war. More experienced Labour MPs warn that the confrontation with the royal family could cost the entire government. Not just for institutional reasons, but emotional ones. The British people do not see the monarchy as just a symbol, but as part of their national identity. Attacking the palace, according to a Conservative veteran, is like attacking the heart of the nation. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives smell blood. The opposition leader has already pledged to repeal all measures that threaten royal independence, calling William the guardian of British continuity. The polls have begun to reflect this shift. The Conservative Party has risen 7 points in just 3 days, a lightning turnaround that no analyst predicted. Labour insiders, in panic, describe emergency meetings and internal recriminations. Starmer's cabinet seems lost, unsure whether to retreat or double down. Every misstep now risks collapse, and the sensationalist press is circling, multiplying headlines like "The King versus the Government" and "The Realm on the Brink of Rupture." But what truly terrifies the government is the international domino effect that is beginning to take shape. According to diplomats interviewed by the BBC, several Commonwealth nations have already expressed deep concern over the direction of Labour's reforms. In particular, leaders from countries such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, all with the British monarch as head of state, are said to have discreetly supported William, considering his stance an act of institutional preservation. One Australian ambassador, according to reports, went so far as to say that weakening the British monarchy is weakening the very bond of the Commonwealth. And there's also the economic factor. The royals are one of the UK's greatest sources of soft power and tourism. The mere rumour that the monarchy could lose prominence caused shares in event and hospitality companies to plummet. Analysts estimate that if senior royals boycott official events, the annual loss could exceed $1.8 billion. In other words, this is not just a political battle. It's a direct threat to British prestige and the economy. The monarchy is not just tradition, it is also the invisible engine that drives the country's image and trade. And that's why some analysts have already classified the situation as a constitutional time bomb. According to Professor Robert Hazel, one of the UK's leading public law experts, this is the most serious confrontation between Crown and government since the Second World War. He warns that if neither side backs down, the country could face an unprecedented crisis, without a script, without a manual, and without an easy way out. The very functioning of the British system depends on a silent pact between tradition and politics, between symbolic authority and real power. And that pact is now crumbling in real time. Government insiders say Starmer is cornered, torn between pleasing his Republican base or preserving the stability of the state. Meanwhile, William is said to have confided to close allies that remaining neutral in the face of the monarchy's destruction is the same as betraying it. The prince seems willing to risk being called a rebel, because, in his view, it is better to face the wrath of politicians than to let the crown be reduced to an ornament. The question is, will the people follow him to the end in this crusade? And so we reach the point of no return. Sources within Parliament confirm that the debate on royal reforms is scheduled for this Wednesday, and if the government insists on pushing the project forward, the UK could experience the greatest institutional clash in nearly a century. On one side, a beleaguered Prime Minister trying to prove his strength before a divided party. On the other, a prince who has decided to break his silence and challenge a system that, in his view, is betraying the very essence of Britain. History will tell whether William made a fatal mistake or initiated the most important defense of the monarchy since the abdication of Edward VIII. But one thing is certain. The country is at a crossroads that will define its future, between being a nation of tradition and sovereignty or a state subjected to the fleeting will of power-hungry politicians. And for millions of Britons, this struggle is not just about laws, funds, or protocols. It's about identity, faith, and legacy. The realm is divided, but an ancient flame seems to have been rekindled. The battle between the throne and the cabinet has begun, and the outcome of this war will decide the fate of the British monarchy in the 21st century.